All right, let's get this party started. Thank you all for coming out. I'm going to kick off. The evening with a few thank yous. So first off, if any of you watched the candidate forum or the de facto debate at City Hall, I did not thank my family, which is a massive omission. So right off the rip, thanks to my beautiful wife Brooke and my two daughters Ella and Lila over here. Ella actually has been going door to door with me. She hand wrote her own Vote for Jesse flyers, and she brought us snacks. It was an amazing time to go together. She was very frustrated when people didn't open their doors because she wanted to talk to everybody. So thank you very much. Second thank you to Dave Johnson and Chicken and Pickle. There he is. Yep. Thanks, Dave. Thank you for setting this event up. This is an amazing space. We love Chicken and Pickle. It is an absolute cornerstone in North Kansas City. So thank you for the support there. And for the dips. So if anybody hasn't grabbed some dips back here, we've got spinach and artichoke and buffalo chicken dip. Go grab some of those. They're delicious. Also, order food and drinks and tip your servers nice. We got Lexi, Jordan, and Jessica up here taking care of everybody. So make sure to treat them nicely and to tip generously. With all that said, thank you so much for coming out on a Tuesday night when it's beautiful outside to come in here and sit and listen to me talk for a few minutes, and then hopefully to have a good discussion. I'd love to hear any questions, thoughts, concerns, feedback, and ideas that are in your mind. So a little bit about me. My name is Jesse, and I'm a candidate for the mayor of North Kansas City. The election is coming up in just a couple weeks on April the 8th. That is also my actual birthday. So if vote for me, I have great plans for North Kansas City doesn't work. Vote for me, it's my birthday. So just a little bit about me. I've been on the city council for 6 years, been on the planning commission for about half that long. My background is in finance. I have a degree from the University of Georgia in finance, and I work in real estate now. I'm a realtor and an investor. I love the city, lived here a little over a decade. I never intended to live in North Kansas City. My wife had already bought a house here when we met, and we had that pros cons chart. She won that discussion, and I moved to North Kansas City a little bit begrudgingly. And I had a 3-year plan to get back to the southeast. I'm from near Savannah, Georgia, and this place just wins you over quickly. It's an amazing community. It's infinitely walkable. All the amenities that you just could dream about. We've got parks for days. We've got flat, level streets. We've got amazing community services. The internet is free for crying out loud, and the city will give you $400 to just throw a party in your street. What other city can you get that package all in one place? And there's, of course, a whole lot more. So I love the city. I'm looking to be the mayor for the next 4 years, and I welcome any questions, thoughts, and concerns. Let's talk through your ideas, and then I'm going to lay out a few bullet points of my vision. So anybody want to kick off with a question or a thought or concern? Yes, sir.
Not for me, for my dear wife. Can you get the light fixed at the dog park? There's been light there for years. It's not ready to go. You just can't.
So the question is lights at the dog park. I've sent the inquiry in. I'm told it's a dusk to dawn style of park, but we will keep talking with the Parks Board about getting that set up. I know people like to go before work, especially in the wintertime or as it's getting darker earlier or the sun's coming up later. It would be nice to have some sort of lighting. So
There's already a light there.
just fix it. Easy enough. I have sent in some inquiries. We're gonna keep following up on that. Yes, sir. Oh, you okay? We got a volunteer over here to fix it. Thanks, Jack. Yeah. What other questions or concerns, thoughts do we have? Yes.
Jesse, it's nice to see you again. You kind of just started like hitting on this a teeny bit, but most folks when they run for mayor or they run for office, they tell us about the things they would change.
Sure.
I would love to hear what are the top of things you just think are really fantastic about.
This is a sponsored question. So the question is, what are the things that are fantastic about North Kansas City? I alluded to a little bit of it earlier. We are a small town on the edge of a big city. So we are roughly, I think the latest count, somewhere near 6,000 residents. So we are small enough to have actual community here where you can walk down the street, neighbors are sitting on front porches. We have the old grid style neighborhoods where you're not stuck wandering around a cul-de-sac. You're actually walking through a gridded neighborhood with people, bungalows with front porches. I get goosebumps thinking about like sit on a front porch swing. You can meet your neighbors that way. We have a small municipal government, so I don't mean to like talk bad about Kansas City. They have urban sprawl for days. But if you have an issue there, a pothole or a sidewalk or something of that nature, you might be on a list for years to get that sidewalk fixed. We had a council member ask about an entire block that didn't have sidewalk on it, and within 2 months, we had a whole new set of sidewalk. We get our services are impeccable. After a storm, you might wake up and not know it even happened. Our public works is out there just absolutely crushing it. We have, I'm not certain it's still true, but at one point I believe we had the highest concentration of police presence per capita. And our police and fire are incredible. They rate highest on all the community surveys. It's an amazing place to live. I'm raising 2 little girls here. I can take them to any number of parks, and we can walk to those places. There's just so much to love here. We have small businesses that are, Dave chose North Kansas City to anchor Chicken and Pickle, which has now become a national brand. We also have places like Screenland Armor, District Biscuits, Cinder Block, Big Rip. We have a number of breweries that have opened here. We own our own water supply. We treat our own water. People don't know this. We don't drink out of the Missouri River like most of the rest of the metro. We have an aquifer underground, and because of that, a number of breweries have opened because the water is just so good. I mean, there's just a lot to love about North Kansas City.
I did not know about the officer.
Yeah. What else do we have?
I'll give you one.
All right, go ahead, George.
On your card, you talk about helping citizens. I like the idea, walkability, which you just talked about. But where are we going with these trail networks? And is it gonna you think it's gonna be accomplished? And
Okay, so the question was, and I'll go down my bullet point. We'll talk through some of these as well. But the question is on healthy citizens initiatives and trail networks. What do we see from that? So I've alluded a number of times to walkability. We're in a space where from the river all the way to the base of the bluff, there's 5 feet rise over run. So walkability, bikeability in North Kansas City is incredible. But we'd like to connect. We've had an exploratory discussion. There's some regional connections that we'd like to find on trails. And so personally, I've tested this out. I've got an e-bike and I go pick my girls up at Briarcliff Elementary and further up at Clay Platte Montessori. And I ride my bike up on these trails, and there are a number of trails that aren't quite connected. So you can go up North Oak on the sidewalk, and you veer off across North Oak into River Forest or into Waterworks Park. There's a Briarcliff Greenway. But I know a number of people have been asking, how do we connect in a meaningful way, in an intentional way, so that if I want to ride a bike from North Kansas City all the way up to Berry Road, is that possible? And that's interjurisdictional. It's going to be a whole lot of people in the discussions. There's also talk of the levee trails. So not riding on top of the levee. We've had that discussion with the Army Corps, with the levee district. There's riprap, there's erosion issues, a lot of concerns. We don't want to mess with that. But we talked about putting it down on the riverfront, whole nother host of issues, including water rising, what do you build it out of? But that's promising. I would love to see something like that to get people out in nature, even the nature that exists just outside of the industrial area here. So believe it or not, if you look out the window here, you're seeing a lot of warehousing, but just beyond that is a river that we're just not utilizing mostly at all. So I'd love to see something like that put together.
That fall into the parks department for you?
Currently, no. We could designate it as park ground and put it under the Parks Department, but right now it would be a city project and funded that way. But the wider network is going to be a partnership with Casey Moe, Gladstone, getting Riverside, Parkville, everybody into the mix.
Are you anticipating how the cuts to the KCATA might affect the Parkland
Yeah.
route?
Yes. So the question is on the KCATA, and this is something that I delved into at the candidate forum, which I highly recommend. If you're watching this, also watch that. KCATA is a difficult one because we've had a relationship with them for a long time. They're a bi-state agency that takes federal dollars and both state dollars and put it together and try to create a transit plan for the metro. The trouble with our relationship with the KCATA is they have asked for ever increasing prices for transit, and we're what's called an enclave city. So the bus runs, the 201, for example, runs from Kansas City up to the edge of Gladstone now, and it just passes through us. So they're driving that route one way or another. And at a certain point, it was a couple years ago, we were paying in the low $600,000 range for the 238, the 201, and the circulator bus. It's very popular in town. They came to us and said it's now going to be 2.2 million. And then my question was, could you explain that to us? And they said, not really. We have a calculation. We can't show you that calculation, but it says $2.2 million. Can you pay us that? And we said, no, it'll bankrupt our transit fund. So then they came back and said, what about 1.1 million? Like just the very next meeting. And we also, again, asked for some basis for that, and we got nothing. Just a vague allusion to prices being higher. And so by the end of it, we said, well, we have this much budgeted for it. Can you make that work? And they said, yeah, I guess we can. So it's been a really tough one, but they are looking at some funding gaps now. They've also, partially because Kansas City is the major player in the space, and they have guaranteed up until a certain point zero fare, which I think it has some good and bad to it. But when it's zero fare and there's nothing coming in, there's going to be funding gaps. And we don't have a seat at the table to have those discussions. As the funding erodes and they start cutting routes, we get caught in the mix of that. So I haven't heard any specific impacts to North Kansas City yet. I know Kansas City approved a budget that would add money for KCATA to help ensure routes continue. But I don't know how long that will go and how durable that is. So through October. It's short, yeah. So it's a Band-Aid, right? And we did at a certain point explore other options. So when they brought us that big $2.2 million, we formed a transit subcommittee. I sat on that committee. We put out an RFP, or a request for proposal, to a number of transit agencies and a number of, we did a national search. And what we mostly got proposed are these ride-sharing app-based. We tried Iris, which is a KCATA run. They told us it would be curb to curb, and instead it was like, we'll pick you up at CVS and drop you off at McDonald's if you're trying to go to the hospital, and that just doesn't work. So we looked at that. We looked at a couple others, some out of California that were mostly technology solutions with cars attached. We had a fixed route bus operator that was literally just going to run up and down Burlington and up and down Armour. So none of those solutions quite fix the problem of getting around the greater metro. And so I don't know what that will look like. If KCATA ends up losing a big chunk of funding in the whirlpool of federal and state cutting of all things that help people who need them, I don't know what that'll look like for us. But we will be paying attention to that. What else do we have on our minds?
So, I haven't gotten a lot of clarity on this from your forum and whatnot, but do you think you can be a better mayor than Brian?
It's a fair question. Why am I running in the first place, right? So the question was differentiator, and why would I see myself as a better mayor than Mayor DeLong? So Mayor DeLong and I have been friends for a long time. I'll preface it straight out. I have nothing negative to say about Bryant. He's a great guy. He loves the city. The differentiator is our style of communication. So I want to be out there having difficult conversations. If you are, and we talked beforehand, I don't think you've joined the neighborhood Facebook page yet, but take a look at that and look back on post history. Every time the council has a sticky issue or a difficult decision, I will go out to there, because that's the broadest net that I can cast, and put out, here's the decision we made. whether you agree with it or not, this is what happened, and then these are like the 12 metrics we use to get there. Let's have a discussion about those. So like next time we know where people's minds are on this issue. And then we've done it a number of times. I also hold things like this. This is a campaign event, no like parsing words on that, but I do this when I'm not campaigning. So I've sat down at Big Rip, I've sat down at Cinder Block. We've had open discussions where I come with no script. I just want to hear what's on people's minds. And I think that's been missing most of the whole time I've been on the governing body. And then it's the same internally, right? Like we're not hearing as much as I would like to as members of the council. If anybody remembers when we had a stadium proposal that was going to go roughly a couple hundred feet that way, and it was whispered around town. It was the biggest open secret in the metropolitan area. And we have a yard sale every May, and I would walk around with my daughters and, hey, councilman, what's going on with the stadium? And I just have to tell, I don't know. Like, I have no idea. I know that there are conversations ongoing, and I know that somebody from our governing body is there, but nothing's getting communicated back to us. And that was really frustrating. This is the biggest decision that was going to be made in the city by a factor of 10. And so my promise is transparent, consistent communication. That's going to be the biggest difference. Otherwise, we align on most issues. We have a couple other things. The one other piece I would say is boards and commission, the way those appointments are made. As a council person, I've been a little frustrated because we have no idea what the candidate pool looks like for any of those. We don't see the applications. When somebody submits an application for the Parks Board, right? Very popular board to be on. It goes in, they send it into the website, and then you don't hear anything, and then maybe somebody gets selected. For me, I want to let the council know what do the applications look like on the stack, and then speak with the parks director. What skills are you lacking on that board? What do you need to fill out the roles on that board? Hospital board, library board. Have the discussion with the people who are doing the work and see what's missing. Those are really my two big differentiators.
Well, there's one other, we can understand you, we can understand Glenn, we thought.
I won't repeat that one. Yes, sir.
Does the city have any position or stance about homelessness?
So the questions on homelessness, there's no official stance from the city. We see increased numbers now that the hillside has been clear cut for the apartments up there. I know there were a number of individuals living in those woods, and they've started to filter down into Mackey Park. I hear through the grapevine reports of panhandling downtown, people trying to live their lives that have been displaced because of the hillside being cut. It's a very multifaceted problem. I don't have a single answer solution for it by any means, but I do want to partner up because right now we're trying to stopgap. Right when it gets super ridiculously dangerously cold, we fund the Northland Assistance Center to put people in hotels to keep them alive. Like that's been our best effort right now, but that's not a durable solution. That's money that goes in, it disappears, and people are back out on the street. It's also not something that we have a funding mechanism for, but I would like to bring a coalition together. As mayor, I would like to work with a Turning Point, Hillcrest, a number of other community organizations, the YMCA, that offer these types of services, but we can't be the ones that fix it. I think it's going to take a group of individual organizations brought together to tackle it.
Quick campaign speech.
What's that?
Quick campaign speech. I'm not the brightest guy you hang around. My wife and I are gonna go to a homeowners meeting, Cliff West. I'd rather be at a candidate forum than a homeowners association. But I just like to say as we walk out, this is a fine gentleman. The honest things you did a year before, I don't know, was downstairs, whatever your stance is. Jesse just did a thing on gun control and gun education. Wherever you are on that, it was overpowering to me. With it just, and I left that night, I have some strong opinions on it, but I left that night with the best thing we can do is educate better, stuff at home. And so, in a very controversial issue, I was very impressed that you brought people together and just came up with a common sense solution wherever you were on that. So
Thanks.
I'm a big fan, and I think you should pitch, come to your party on April 2nd.
Yeah, appreciate that. Appreciate
April
that.
2nd, is that fair to say to everybody?
Yeah, April 2nd, especially the folks who are watching this. We've got some tickets out. If you want a link, shoot it over to me. We got tickets with a password. It's going to be an invite only because we have a tight capacity on the rooftop. But if you're interested, let me know.
On top of.
Life Unlimited.
Life Unlimited.
Yeah.
So thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Dave.
Food and beer.
Yeah, appreciate that. Thank you so much. Appreciate y'all coming out. Enjoy the homeowners meeting. And yeah, I'll put a little color on that one as well. So after the shooting at the Chiefs celebration, the mass shooting there, and then at the high school just a week later, we were sitting at dinner with our girls, and we hear 50 rounds get fired off, and we can hear them from our living room. That sort of stuff doesn't just go away, right? It's not something that goes in one ear and out the other, and I got really upset. And again, wherever you land on the gun discussion, I am not somebody who's trying to take away the guns, right? Like, I have no authority to do that anyway, even if it was something I was pushing for. But in our community, what can we do, right? I kind of went off at the dais that Missouri has some of the most permissive gun laws. The state has preemption laws, so there's nothing we can do to put in place to do anything about it. So what can we as a community do to lower the risk, to take the temperature down? And I did. I hosted something downstairs here, brought the chief of police in, brought Moms Demand Action in to give some just common sense ideas that we can move the needle even a little bit. And I actually got an email today from Moms Demand Action. I forget the term. I'm a common sense gun governance something. I'm not backed by Moms Demand Action. They make that clear in the email, but I have gotten that designation, and I appreciate it because anything we can do to make our community safer from any perspective, but guns in particular, I would love to have those discussions. Andy.
With the anticipated increase with the apartments going up on homes.
Yep.
Is the city planning on additional traffic control, especially on Howell? And something to address off of the speed or is it?
Yeah, so the question was, got a lot of apartments going on up the hill that's outside of our jurisdiction, but that will impact us, especially the folks that live on Howell. And so what we have introduced preemptively, this is honestly before we knew about those apartments, but we put in what's called a road diet on Howell, where we have those bump outs outside of Mackin Park. It pinches the road so it feels a little more narrow. The center islands mean when you're driving down Howell, you shouldn't be able to just fly down in a straight line. People still find a way to do it. We did some traffic monitoring after the fact. The average speed has gone down, but it's those outliers you see that are just trying to set the limit. And we do have higher presence. You'll often see an officer parked there at the park in the spaces, radaring, watching, being present. But as of now, I don't think we have any specific plans. I think we need to see what the load looks like coming down Howell. That intersection at Howell and 32nd can also be explored because it's a little tricky coming up over the levee. So those are things we're going to be looking at. And there's also talks of the redesign, which would add the bike path that goes through Mackin Park, possibly ties down 32nd and then up North Oak. So a lot of that is in flux, but it's something we are certainly keeping our eye on.
Some of our concerns, my wife and neighbors too, is concerned is it going to take somebody to get hit by a car?
Yeah. Yeah.
Before action is taken.
Yeah, and I've heard that a lot, right?
Yeah.
Like, and a lot of
I
cities,
heard it again 2 days ago.
a number of cities use that as a metric. It's the unfortunate thing is, they wait for something terrible to happen to react. We try to be proactive, and we can say that all day long, but then if an incident happens, then we're reacting, right? So we are watching it. The Howell Street discussion was, I think it was right before you moved to town, maybe, that we were putting those bump outs together, that we talked through a whole bunch of different options. And I'll say personally, as somebody who lives right in that area and walks with my two tiny daughters to the park very often, it feels better, but it hasn't nipped the speeding entirely. And it is going to be even more busy with those apartments.
We still have to play Frogger when we try to get to
Yep.
the park.
Yep.
Yeah.
Jesse, on that point, There's a problem in my mind today on how an iron, because of the number of large trucks that are going up that. I know they're supposed to come in through the north.
Yep.
Supposed to leave by the north,
Yep.
but they don't do it.
Yeah.
Now, I think the police officer sitting there could probably help. And it's basically during working hours that those big trucks are on there. It's not at 10 o'clock at night
Right.
or 3 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
So I would urge you to encourage the chief to start enforcing this better as far as these large trucks.
They have been ticketed.
They have been, yeah, and so that's what I was gonna tell you. Every time, I've got a number of, I would call them watchdogs on Howell that, like, I get messages every time a big truck shows up. Like, for a while there, they were unloading the big equipment in the parallel, or in this parking spaces at Mackin, and then taking them up the hill and digging up the hillside. Look, as soon as that comes in, I've got a text message or an email sent to the Public Works Director, who is kind of overseeing our response to that, and then the Chief of Police, and they're quick. But it is, the struggle is each time they change what's happening on the hillside, a new crew comes in, a new foreman comes in, and they got to be educated. And so it's us trying to stay ahead of it, but it's frustrating because they're tearing up the street. You saw the big pothole that opened up and was sealed today right there on Howell at 28th, I think, 26th. Yeah, and we don't want that. And we don't want big machines going through when kids are going to the park. So they are on it, and I've had a number of people keeping me informed as well. There's also some erosion coming off the hill when there was some big storms. They had just put the dirt out and it was all running down to 30 seconds. So we went up and fussed at them about that. You can't take it all back out of the storm sewer, but it was a discussion for sure.
Are you satisfied with the water plans around that development to keep us from flooding?
Yeah, so the question was, so this is the development between Cherry and Holmes, north of North Kansas City. The question was, am I satisfied with the water retention requirements that were overlaid on the project? I am not an expert in water retention or water. I do have a good friend who does that professionally, but I'm not that expert. I rely on our levee district and the Army Corps to overlay those conditions, and we're lucky that as this was starting to happen, that whole group activated, and our levee district does not play around. And so they and the levee engineer went to and represented us well at those planning commission meetings for Kansas City. And I believe it's 42 conditions, I'd have to check, but they overlaid a lot of conditions on that development so that in theory, if they do all the things that they're supposed to do, the water coming off that hillside will be reduced from when it was full vegetation. Now, we'll see. I hope that that's right. Because that is our weakest spot. That part of the levee at Howell and at Cherry are our lowest points in the entire levee. It's also a couple hundred feet from my front door, so if you think I'm not watching, trust me, I am. Yeah, it's pretty close to home. Yep.
Would you go back and talk some more about the stadium issue again? You're right, it was the biggest by a factor of 10 decisions that happened in a year.
Sure.
I don't know if it's dead, but if it's something like that came up again, how would that get decided? Because at the time, and that's just based on the Facebook page, and
Yep.
it's probably not very scientific, it seemed like the majority of people were against it. It could still happen anyway.
Sure.
And in a city this small, would it be up for a vote? Would it be something that some rogue mayor or whoever was doing that could just decide?
Right. So question was about the stadium situation. Is it dead? And if we were to be reapproached, for example, how would it be handled differently? And that it seemed that public opinion was largely in the negative. Could it be done anyway? So as far as I know, the Royals discussions have no life. Kansas put forth a plan to issue bonds for whatever they want, and I don't know where that landed, but I know that a group of us went and met with the governor, Missouri Governor Parsons, before his term was up, and we talked about what, if anything, Missouri wanted to do to counter Kansas and what that would look like for North Kansas City if that was still the site. What I learned from that meeting is that there's a lot of state money for things that would be tangentially related to a stadium development, water, sewer, wastewater, streetcar, public infrastructure, all the things that would go around it that would be good for the city, there's state dollars for that. What my fallout or my main takeaway from the meeting was that it's not something Missouri's probably taking seriously. It's something that Kansas seems to really badly want. It's not something that, and I haven't heard anything from Governor Kehoe, not that those may not have happened, but I'm not hearing any of that. So I consider that to be pretty much dead. The way I look back on those discussions is pretty frustrating. So the discussion, the earliest I heard a whisper of it was February of that year. I believe it was 23, and didn't hear much of anything else until October. And so all the while, there's the rumor mills and there's Facebook, a thread, give or take, once a month would pop up and we'd have 100 comments, and mostly people that were saying, I want nothing to do with this. I do say, and I'll speak on both sides of, I take caution with using Facebook as the barometer for public opinion. And so I went to the mayor and said, look, people want to know what's going on. Personally, I want to know what's going on. We can't answer all the questions. Some of this is privilege, some of it's contractual, some of it's very early discussion. But let's get people together and have a discussion about it. That'll pack out a room. We could have it at City Hall, we can have it at the Parks building. Where are we going to accommodate a group big enough? And it may be a frustrating meeting to sit through, but we should do it. We need to, like I say, I can't walk down the street, I can't go across the park without somebody asking me about this. And I'm sick of saying I don't know, because people know something. And so how do we do that? How do we have those discussions honestly? And then how do we discuss in real terms, what are the dollar amounts of benefits that could come with something like that? Now, a stadium project is a pretty unique deal. There's all sorts of studies that have been done about whether it's good or bad or neutral. And then there are other factors with things like streetcar and water and sewer. I would be willing to listen if it came back, but I'm not excited about it like I was at one point. And if another group approached and had a development plan that brought some state dollars to us, I'm not, as some people want me to just say, buzz off, we're Northtown and we want to be small forever. I'm still going to have those discussions because there's lots of big ticket items and lots of very old infrastructure that could come and be upgraded with those dollars.
If that decision be put to a vote within the city limits, so the citizens of the city get to vote on something that big, it doesn't have to be the
Sure.
stadium, but, or would that be something that the council or the mayor just decides or makes a deal and the dollars make sense, so we're doing it?
Sure. Typically, that's going to be decided by the governing body. That's why, in theory, that's why you have elections to elect representatives in North Kansas City. Right now, we're having an election that you're literally only just voting for mayor. All the council seats are determined because one person ran for each. So calling it a true representative group is tough. I don't know how we would put together a true citizen vote referendum and then get that pushed out and voted by everybody. It's something that seems like a good idea, but also just having those community discussions and getting true, honest feedback so that we can make the decision that the citizens really are pushing for. An example of that recently was the parking lot and much smaller, but the parking lot proposal from the school district at 23rd and Fayette, that the community came in and said, in no uncertain terms, please don't do this. And the planning commission and the city council listened, despite the school making a good faith plan and effort to put a parking lot in. We said, it's not what the residents want, and we were able to make that decision. Now that's, again, much smaller. And if it were to come back, if something like that came back, I would have a discussion about putting a citizen vote on. But what that looks like in the mechanics, I really don't know.
Jesse, we'll get to vote for you, but there's a large part of the tax base in North Kansas City that doesn't get to vote for.
Correct.
And that's our industry and our warehousing and everything else. What's your interface with that? What are you gonna do to try and improve where they feel better part of North Kansas City?
Yeah, so the business community, and there's been this kind of tension since I've been on the governing body of a them versus us kind of mentality, and it's come up with bike lanes, it's come up with tax disputes. I don't like that generalization that there's residents concerns and there's business concerns and they can't be part of the same discussion. I've sat down with Dave Johnson. I've sat down with John Miller Jr., who John, if you don't know, owns over 1 million square feet, has a lot of tenants who are interested in what's going on. I've gone out with him and Richard Lanning when he ran NT Realty to go and actually talk to the businesses that operate here and to see, like, what are you missing? I've gone to roundtables that Rich Groves with the Business Council hosts, and he'll hold an industry specific for construction, right? Or he'll hold one for food, drink, and beverage. And I've attended these and like ask them, what is it that you don't see from the governing body? And they say oftentimes, like, we're just so busy in the business of doing business that we miss a thing that the city's doing, and then we show up to a meeting after it's already been decided because we didn't know what was going on. And so I want to build that bridge. I want to work on that. How do we, because by the time it comes out in a quarterly newsletter, it's old news. How do we get that continuous open communication line with the businesses? And I don't know, that's a tough one. I think that there's a lot of misunderstanding. Something I want to do, and I don't know if I enumerated it on my my actual website, but I want to go spotlight local businesses, go in with like my video here and interview the owner, something unique. There's a place that grows mushrooms in a warehouse, right? There's all kinds of things that go on in this town that is just under the surface. This is a guy who refurbishes batteries and sells them back to the public. Interesting things that are happening in these warehouses that people just don't realize. And kind of go and make a limited video series on that to bring those into the light and just start building a bridge between the residents and the businesses that have chosen to set up shop here and give them a voice.
Can we talk a little bit about housing? It might open a can of worms.
Sure. Housing.
Yeah, so obviously North Kansas City, like very attractive area, it's getting more attractive.
Yep.
Obviously that's gonna lead to a rise, like a lot of market rate units.
Yep.
And, you know, rightfully so, it's an attractive place to be. But obviously that's gonna have its own side effects for overall affordability.
Yep.
I think, North Kansas City is also kind of in a unique position too. It's in a qualified census tract, so developers are gonna get that extra money from development. While at the same time, you have transit access, you have, you know, all the schools, you know, a lot of these things that make it an opportunity area. So I'm just kind of curious, you know, what are your thoughts on overall plans for, housing in the city? What your thoughts are there? It's gonna require, you know, the developer community to act too, and, be active.
Yeah, great question. So let me try to rephrase that because I don't know how the audio is going to sound. Question about housing, it's about the fact that North Kansas City, I guess you'd say the secret's out. People know about North Kansas City, people want to live here, the demand is sky high, and with that comes the rise in prices, the rise in rent, the rise in demand for market rate units, and how can we or will we as a city look at affordability and try to lean into that? So it's a big question. Part of the master plan also calls for home ownership, which is something that is a very difficult nut to crack. So I'll try to talk about all that. So I'm a big believer in supply and demand forces, and so if demand is super high and we don't have enough to satisfy that demand, the prices are just going to soar. And so apartments, while it's not been popular, the more apartments that get built, the more downward pressure gets put on prices. And you can't build what people are calling above market units. That doesn't exist, right? That you can ask any price, but as soon as you don't get leases signed, you're learning that that's no longer the market. So I don't know. I haven't been able to see, because 23rd and Swift is pretty new. They're just now leasing up. I know they put forth a price sheet. It was a little eye-watering at the time, and I'm not sure, but I know they've been leasing up. And so that tells me that demand is still there. And as a city, we only have a few parcels that we still own. We own the one just north of Northgate Village. There's a space kind of at the base of the Cherry Street Hill. We have Caboose Park, which is next to the YMCA and the Park Lofts. There's kind of a green space there. Those are the only ones we can really say what happens. And even then, we can put out a request for proposal, and if nobody proposes to build buildings with affordable units because it doesn't make fiscal sense for them, we can't force them to do it. We can just go back and rebid it. There was a question at the candidate forum about inclusionary zoning, where you say, we're going to lock this zone down and only affordable units at a certain percentage can be built. And my answer there was, you might find that benevolent developer that's going to come in and propose to build that, but more likely you're going to find somebody who will propose something that doesn't quite fit it and ask for a variance, or they'll build that percentage of affordability, but they'll build a lower quality building and then won't maintain it, or they'll sell it as soon as they're finished. And so what sort of incentives exist? Right now at the state and national level, not a lot is being funneled in that direction. And I don't even know if inclusive zoning is allowed under Missouri law. There's a lot of preemption stuff that they say, we can't do that sort of thing. So the tools in our toolkit right now, there's 100 acres that have been purchased. They are going to be developed. They were possibly a stadium. Now they're going to be something else. We don't know yet. And during those times, there's going to be some rezoning requests. Along with those, we may be able to overlay some conditions. If we overlay too many, the thing doesn't get built. If we don't overlay enough, affordability suffers. It's going to be threading that needle and working with the developers. And I am willing to have those discussions. I have a background in real estate and finance, so I feel comfortable having those discussions. And I'm looking forward to seeing what comes over here. But it is going to be difficult, right? The market dynamics are tough. Yep.
And is that along 18th Street, that area you're referring to for development?
Yeah, where the bowling alley used to be. So there's 100 acres that has been bought by a private owner, and it encompasses warehouses and parking lots and a whole lot of stuff over there. That was bought, from my understanding, with the original intent to bring the Royal Stadium and surrounding developments into North Kansas City. With those plans, as I've mentioned, kind of fading off, what's next? And it's an open question. Yes, sir.
So I work at UMKC. A few weeks ago, one of the engineering firms that's conducting streetcar extension study was there. Right, talking to him, wasn't able to get a lot of information on the study, still ongoing, but
Sure.
his opinion essentially was that it was going to come down to who's going to pay for it. So, any thoughts on that?
We've done, I think, 2 studies now. I'm not sure when the first one was done. I think that was before my time. We did a second one and the price more than doubled. And I think if we did it again, the price might do it again. It's been wild what those numbers look like. Part of the struggle too is just that crossing the bridge, right? Getting a streetcar across the Heart of America Bridge and into North Kansas City is wildly expensive. I believe the last study I looked at, that was 2/3 of the price was simply that bridge crossing. And you have 2 jurisdictions in the cookie jar. Most of the thought is that it benefits us to get it across, so Kansas City didn't have as much interest in paying for that portion. And so it's how does it get funded, and part of that is getting the state dollars involved. And at the time we had that discussion about the Royal Stadium, Governor Parsons suggested that there might be some interest in funding the streetcar to bring people to an event there. I don't know what would happen without a tied-in development, but it's going to be a big number. And do we put that on? I've seen where in the studies they'll put a walk shed, so they'll run the line, and then at this distance, this tax, at this distance, this tax, because of the influence. Part of what's tough with Burlington is if you start going west, you run into the railroad tracks, and then you're out of North Kansas City. And so the disparate amount of the bill comes east, and it starts stacking up on Chicken and Pickle and the Oxbow and all of these warehouses here that aren't really going to see a ton of benefit from it. So it is a very difficult funding mechanism to put together. I need to look back at what was done in River Market, because there was a lot of grumbling and groaning when those tax overlays went on, and how it's actually shaken out for those businesses. So I haven't heard anything from that study yet either, but as it comes down, we're going to be looking at what that number is going to be, and we're going to want funding from other jurisdictions. Any other thoughts, questions? Okay, I'm going to run quickly down my, I brought flyers. If anybody has, they're on the tables. I would encourage you to grab a couple of these and give them to your neighbors if they haven't seen them yet. I've handed these out at a number of most of the neighborhoods. I haven't been down the avenues yet. I've also sent a mailer, and why duplicate efforts? So this is the back of the mailer as well. But take a couple, tell your neighbors. It's got the election date on the top. It's also got a QR code, and the top link there will set a calendar reminder to go vote on the 8th. One of the hardest things to get people to remember is to go vote in a municipal election, especially an off-year election after a national election that exhausted everybody. So getting people out to vote. I will fly through some of the top bullet points. Again, my big promise is transparent communication, making sure that there's two-way communication. I'm even looking at exploring a centralized app-based communication. There's been cities that have had a lot of success with that. So we're pushing out a unified message. And then if there's a need to know event, heaven forbid, a shooting near the high school, there was a lot of like black hole on that. Like, what do we know? Do we have any information? And if there's an app that people are all involved with, we can push that out in real time. So that kind of stuff. Holding town halls like this, and then just being generally accessible. If somebody tries to get a hold of me, to send me an email, you're gonna get a response. Even if it's I will get back to you on that, you'll get a response. It won't just go to an inbox with nothing. Healthy citizens, I want to convene a healthy citizens committee. I've already had people tell me they're interested in doing this. I want to get people from the hospital, the YMCA, personal trainers, dietitians, people who understand the small incremental changes we can make to be healthier as a as people in general. Make recommendations to residents, doing walkability audits. Dylan's been helping put forth some ideas on that. So dropping a pin and having people walk from all different parts of the city to that spot, people of different ability levels, and seeing what do they encounter, what's a problem that we wouldn't see, and then fixing those problems. Trail networks we talked about. Resident safety, supporting fire and police. I mentioned we get amazing ratings, but continuing to support that. And I will say there's a mailer that's probably in your box right now that mentions the Local 42 Fire Union is endorsing my friend Bryant. And I want to be very clear, that is the Local 42 Firefighters Union. That is not the North Kansas City Fire Department. They use a logo that is indistinguishable, and they even put the name North Kansas City on that logo for this mailer, which is so deceptive that it's ridiculous. And our fire department doesn't take sides because they're too focused on serving North Kansas City. So I 110% support our fire and police. Whatever you hear in an endorsement, don't let that sway your thoughts. Gun violence prevention, Dave talked about that. Want to hold more town halls, see how we can move the needle, even in small increments. Safe streets and homes. We've talked about code enforcement a lot. That was one of the things we suffered most on the most recent resident survey. We have some rentals that are pretty poor condition that everyone could point to one, right? They could walk down any of the avenues and point to a house that's clearly not being taken care of. What are we doing about that? And what can we do about that? I want people reporting. I want a mechanism where somebody can say something. It's difficult because if somebody's living in a unit that's unlivable and they self-report, they have accidentally evicted themselves because if it's unlivable, they can't live there. So how do we do that in a way that's fair? Infrastructure, we have ongoing water, sewer, and wastewater infrastructure studies. This isn't fun to talk about, but it's real. Our pipes are very old, as we saw the one explode in Mackin Park. We had Mackin Lake for a few days, and the folks on 25th had lakefront property. We don't want that to keep happening. Public transit we talked about, KCATA and streetcar. Parking solutions, that's one that's an ongoing battle. I'm going to have a dialogue with the high school to see what we can, if there's anything we can do to move the needle on parking on Fayette, Erie, Gentry, and through parts of 23rd. I've had a high schooler back into my garage at one of my houses and just drive off. So it's one that hits home. It's one that has not been solved. You can pull meetings back to the 80s, even back to the 60s, and they were still talking about these students keep parking at our houses. We'll see if we can work that out. I want to community engagement. I love our block parties. I'll say it. I'll scream it from the rooftops. We'll give you $400 to close off your block and party with your neighbors. More people should be doing this. But I also want to take it a little farther, and again, it's not a fully fleshed out idea, but I would like to find a way to have a quarterly gathering, maybe over a meal, bring in some local restaurants to offer limited menus, have an option that would be either cheap or free so that people can come and have spaghetti together and stop arguing behind their screens, because it's easy to argue with somebody that's this big on a picture on Facebook. It's harder when you're sharing spaghetti and meatballs. Neighborhood assistance program, giving people the opportunity if they want to be a block captain or whatever designation that they say, I'm good for scooping snow for my neighbors, or I would be happy to mow grass for my elderly neighbors. I want to be a point of contact for that and setting that up. So neighbors helping neighbors. I mentioned civic engagement, boards and commissions, taking those appointments seriously, casting a net for people who want to be involved but don't feel like they've been respected when they've applied, and people who just don't know that this is going on. I want to get those people who have the skills and the drive. And then economic development, I say that we've been reactive, not proactive as far as economic development. We are very fortunate that places like Chicken and Pickle have chosen to set up their world headquarters here, but I think we could do more. We have a small, nimble government. We can be easy to work with. We can offer some development incentives. And there's nobody at City Hall that is their sole focus. I don't know if we can create that position or at least put that on somebody in the community development department to be well-versed and being outreaching to different places that we want to bring in. Supporting local business, I mentioned the video project, working with the Business Council, River North, doing everything we can to bridge that gap between business and residents. Fun stuff. Working on a street market, maybe a farmer's market, or even an event where we would close Armour Road off and have a band. People could go into the restaurants along that way, grab a drink, cross into a different restaurant, something like a street festival. I know we do it on Armour with River North, but I'd love to see that brought right into the core of downtown. So those are my talking points. Grab a button on your way out. Grab a button, I'll get you in just a second, grab a flyer or 6. And then get 5 of your neighbors, just 5 of your neighbors who you talk to on a regular basis or that you just know their name, and say, hey, April 8th, please go vote. Municipal elections are so important for your daily life. They have so much more impact than your state and even your federal elections. This is our city and it matters. Go vote on April 8th. Yes, sir.
Just wanted to remind everybody that no excuse early voting started today. 19 minutes from this building to the Clay County Election Commission. So drive there, vote 5 minutes, be back 45 minutes tops if you don't want to vote on election day. So right now you don't need an excuse for your driver's license or your passport. And be in and out if you don't want to vote on April 8th.
Yeah, and in case anybody wonders who this fella is, he works with the election board. He is a poll worker, so Jack is very knowledgeable on all things election, and we need people like him working our polls. Thank you so much for doing that. It's thankless work. He also puts on a tie and a pocket square when he does the poll. It is very dapper. Thanks, everybody.